The massive research ship Zenith 7 drifted through the dark space between stars. Its hull gleamed with a strange blue metal that seemed to bend light around it. Inside the ship, tall, thin creatures moved through corridors that glowed with soft, purple light. These were the Cytherians, and they believed they were the smartest beings in the galaxy. Dr. Zix Vorthak stood 8 feet tall, but his body was so thin that a strong wind might knock him over. His large head held a brain 3 times bigger than any human brain, and his forearms ended in delicate fingers that could perform the most precise work. Like all Cytherians, he had evolved to think rather than fight. His people had never needed strong bodies when they could build machines to do the heavy work. The doctor stared at the viewscreen in his laboratory. His team had been exploring this sector of space for months, looking for new forms of life to study. The Cytherian Empire was always expanding, always claiming new worlds for their vast collection of resources. But today, they had found something different. "Dr. Vorthak," called his assistant, Kilmexis. Her voice was high and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The salvage team has brought back something unusual from that debris field." The debris field had once been a small fleet of primitive spacecraft. The ships were crude things made of simple metal and burning chemical fuel. Whatever species had built them was clearly not very advanced. The Cytherians had seen thousands of such wrecks throughout the galaxy. Most primitive species died out quickly when they tried to explore space without proper technology. "What is it?" Dr. Vorthak asked, not looking away from his current experiment. He was studying the cellular structure of a plant from the 4th planet in this system. "It appears to be a preservation chamber," Kill said. "But there is something alive inside." This got the doctor's attention. His large black eyes turned toward his assistant. Finding living beings from extinct civilizations was rare and valuable. Such discoveries could teach them about the early stages of evolution and intelligence. "Bring it to examination room 7, he ordered, and called Dr. Yunkorith. "We will need her expertise with alien biology." Within an hour, the 3 Cytherian scientists stood around a metal cylinder that had been pulled from the wreckage. The cylinder was primitive but functional. Frost covered its surface, and strange symbols were carved into its side. The writing was simple and blocky, nothing like the flowing script that Cytherians used. "The internal temperature is extremely low," Dr. Korith reported. She was studying the readings on her scanner. "Whatever is inside has been frozen for a very long time." "How long?" Dr. Vorthak asked. "Based on the metal composition and the decay of the radioactive elements in the power source, I estimate 500 years, perhaps more," the 3 aliens exchanged glances. 500 years was a long time, even for their long-lived species. Whatever creature was inside this chamber had been sleeping since before the Cytherian Empire had expanded into this part of space. "The chamber is designed to keep the occupant alive," Kill observed. "The power source is nearly depleted, but the life support systems are still functioning." Dr. Vorthak walked around the cylinder, studying it from all angles. The technology was incredibly primitive compared to Cytherian science. It used simple chemical reactions instead of quantum energy manipulation. The computer systems were based on crude electrical circuits instead of bio-neural networks. Yet somehow it had worked for centuries. What kind of creature builds something like this? He wondered aloud. "The ship fragments we recovered show the same level of technology," Dr. Korith said. "Whoever they were just beginning to explore space. This was probably one of their first attempts at long-distance travel, and they failed," Kill added. "Like so many primitive species do," Dr. Vorthak nodded. The galaxy was full of dead civilizations that had tried to reach for the stars before they were ready. Space was harsh and unforgiving. Only the most advanced species could survive its dangers. "Can we open it safely?" he asked. Dr. Korith ran more scans with her equipment. "The creature inside appears to be in stable condition. Its life signs are weak but steady. If we gradually raise the temperature and adjust the atmospheric mixture, we should be able to revive it without causing damage." "What kind of creature is it?" bipedal mammalian approximately 6 feet in height. The bone density is unusual, though. Much denser than our own. And the muscle mass seems quite high for a creature of this size. Dr. Vorthek was intrigued. Most intelligent species in the galaxy had followed a similar evolutionary path to the Cytherians. As their brains grew larger, their bodies became more delicate. Physical strength became less important as technology advanced. But this creature seemed to have developed differently. Perhaps they were a warrior species, Kill suggested. Some races focus on combat instead of intellectual development. They usually destroy themselves before achieving true civilization. Or perhaps they lived on a world with high gravity, Dr. Korath added. That would explain the dense bones. And heavy muscles. Dr. Vorthek made his decision. We will revive it. Prepare the medical bay and set up full monitoring equipment. I want to record everything. The next several hours were spent in careful preparation. The Cytherians moved the cylinder to their most advanced medical facility. They had equipment that could monitor every aspect of an alien creature's biology and provide life support for dozens of different atmospheric mixtures. The revival process began slowly. The temperature inside the cylinder was gradually raised while the atmospheric mixture was analyzed and adjusted. The creature's life signs grew stronger as its body began to warm. Through the clear panel on top of the cylinder, the aliens could see their subject clearly for the first time. It was indeed bipedal, with 2 arms and 2 legs like many intelligent species. But where Cytherians were tall and thin, this creature was compact and solid. Its skin was darker than their pale gray flesh, and hair covered the top of its head. Remarkable bone structure, Dr. Korath murmured as she studied her scans. The skeleton is incredibly dense. And look at these muscle groups. This creature must be extraordinarily strong for its size. Strong enough to be dangerous? Kill asked nervously. Dr. Vorthek laughed, a sound like water trickling over stones. Look at it, Kill. It is smaller than we are, and it has been frozen for centuries. Even if it were aggressive when healthy, it will be weak and confused when it awakens. We have nothing to fear from such a primitive being. The revival process continued through the night. The creature's brain activity increased steadily, and its breathing became deeper and more regular. According to their instruments, it would regain consciousness within the next few hours. Have you decided what to call it? Dr. Korath asked. Dr. Vorthek consulted the symbols carved on the cylinder. Their translation computers had been working on the primitive language for hours. According to these markings, the creature calls itself Jake Miller. The first word appears to be a personal identifier, while the second indicates family lineage. Jake Miller, Kill repeated slowly. Such a simple name for what may be the last member of its species. Not the last, Dr. Vorthek corrected. Our long-range scouts have detected a planet in the outer rim that matches the environmental conditions this creature would need. There may be others of its kind still alive there. Will we study them too? Kill asked. Perhaps the planet is scheduled for resource extraction in a few months. We may be able to collect more specimens before the mining operations begin. The 3 scientists continued their work, unaware that they were about to make the biggest mistake in the history of their empire. They had no idea that the sleeping creature before them belonged to a species that had earned a fearsome reputation throughout the galaxy. The legends spoke of beings who could survive in environments that would kill most species, who possessed strength that seemed impossible for their size, and who fought with a ferocity that terrified even the most advanced civilizations. But to the Cytherians, Jake Miller was just another primitive specimen to be studied and catalogued. They had no reason to fear a creature from such a backward civilization. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Jake Miller's first sensation was cold. Not the bitter cold of winter back home, but a deep chill that seemed to reach into his bones. His second sensation was confusion. The last thing he remembered was lying down in the cryopod aboard the colony ship New Hope, watching the technicians make their final checks before the long sleep began. He tried to open his eyes, but the lids felt heavy and stiff. Gradually, his vision cleared, and he found himself staring at a ceiling that pulsed with soft blue and purple lights. The patterns moved like living things, flowing across the smooth surface in ways that made no sense. This was definitely not the inside of his cryopod. Jake attempted to sit up, and immediately noticed something was wrong with the bed beneath him. What should have been a solid surface bent and creaked under his weight. He heard a sharp crack, and the entire structure shifted downward. "The subject is awakening," came a voice from somewhere nearby. The words were clear, but there was something strange about them. They sounded hollow and artificial, like they were being translated by a computer. Jake turned his head toward the voice and felt his heart skip a beat. 3 tall, impossibly thin creatures stood near his bed, watching him with large black eyes. They were like nothing he had ever seen, even in the wildest science fiction movies. Their gray skin seemed to glow faintly in the strange light, and their limbs were so thin they looked like they might snap if bent too far. "Where am I?" Jake asked, his voice hoarse from centuries of disuse. He tried to sit up again, and this time the bed frame gave way completely. The metal supports buckled and twisted as if they were made of soft plastic instead of steel. The tallest of the 3 creatures stepped forward. When it spoke, its mouth barely moved, but the translated words came clearly through hidden speakers. "Please remain calm. You are safe aboard our research vessel. I am Dr. Zix Vorthek. We found you in a damaged preservation chamber and have spent considerable effort reviving you." Jake looked around the room, trying to make sense of his situation. The walls curved in impossible ways, and instruments floated in the air without any visible support. Everything glowed with that same soft bioluminescent light. "How long was I out?" "According to our analysis, approximately 500 of your planetary years," the alien doctor replied. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. 500 years. Everyone he had ever known was dead. His family, his friends, his entire world had aged and died while he slept. He gripped the edge of the broken bed frame, and the metal crumpled in his hands like aluminum foil. The 3 aliens exchanged glances. The smallest one, who had introduced herself as Kill Nexus, whispered something in their own language. Jake caught the tone of concern in her voice, even if he could not understand the words. "The New Hope?" Jake said suddenly. "What happened to my ship? Where are the other colonists?" Dr. Vorthek hesitated before answering. "I'm afraid your vessel was destroyed. We found only debris in your preservation chamber. You appear to be the sole survivor." Jake felt a wave of grief wash over him. The colony mission had carried 5,000 people, all hoping to start new lives on a distant world. Farmers, teachers, engineers, doctors, children. All gone. He was alone. 500. Years in the future, surrounded by aliens who looked like they could barely lift a coffee cup. "I need to get up," Jake said, swinging his legs over the side of the ruined bed. "I need to understand what happened." As his feet touched the floor, Jake heard a grinding sound. Looking down, he saw that his weight had left clear impressions in what appeared to be solid metal flooring. The aliens had designed their ship to support their own lightweight bodies, not someone with human bone density and muscle mass. Dr. Vorthek raised one of his 4 hands in a gesture that might have been meant to be calming. "Please, you must rest. Your body has undergone tremendous stress. Our medical systems indicate that you require additional recovery time." "I feel fine," Jake said, and he did. Despite sleeping for 5 centuries, he felt strong and alert. His body had been perfectly preserved by the cryosystem, and his muscles responded normally to his commands. It was everything else that seemed wrong. He took a step toward the aliens, intending to get a closer look at their equipment and maybe figure out where he was. But as he moved, Dr. Vorthek stepped backward quickly, stumbling over his own long legs and nearly falling. "Sorry," Jake said, reaching out instinctively to steady the alien. His hand closed gently around Dr. Vorthek's thin arm. The result was immediate and shocking. Dr. Vorthek let out a high-pitched cry and was lifted completely off his feet by Jake's casual gesture. The alien's body sailed through the air and crashed into a wall of delicate instruments. Glass tubes shattered, sparks flew from damaged circuits, and alarms began wailing throughout the room. Jake stared in horror at what he had done. He had barely touched the alien, certainly had not intended any harm, but Dr. Vorthak lay crumpled among the wreckage of his equipment. "Oh God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." The other two aliens rushed to help their colleague, but they gave Jake a wide berth. Dr. Korath pulled out a medical scanner and ran it over Dr. Vorthak's prone form. "Multiple fractures," she reported. "Severe tissue damage. He will require immediate treatment." Jake felt sick. These beings had saved his life, had spent time and effort bringing him back from the edge of death, and he had repaid them by seriously injuring one of them. "Please let me help. I know first aid. Stay back," Kill Nexus shouted, her musical voice rising to a painful pitch. "Do not come any closer?" Jake froze where he stood. The fear in the alien's voice was unmistakable. These creatures were terrified of him, and he was beginning to understand why. What was normal strength for a human was apparently devastating force to beings who had evolved to be thinkers rather than fighters. Dr. Korath activated some kind of anti-gravity stretcher and carefully moved Dr. Vorthak onto it. As they prepared to leave the room, she looked back at Jake with those large black eyes. "Your physical capabilities far exceed our initial estimates," she said quietly. "We will need to reconsider our safety protocols." After the aliens left, Jake found himself alone in the damaged medical bay. The room's soft lighting had taken on a red tint, probably indicating some kind of emergency status. He could hear voices in the corridors outside, speaking rapidly in the alien language. Jake sat down carefully on the floor, not trusting any more of their furniture to support his weight. He had to think about this situation logically. He was obviously not on Earth. The technology around him was far beyond anything humans had possessed when he went into cryosleep. These aliens had found him and brought him back to life, which meant they were capable of incredible medical science, but they were also physically fragile in a way that seemed almost impossible. Jake was not particularly strong by human standards. He was a construction worker and mechanic, used to manual labor, but he had never been a bodybuilder or athlete. Yet his normal movements were apparently dangerous to these beings. The door to the medical bay opened, and Jake looked up to see a group of aliens in what appeared to be armor. The suits were sleek and form-fitting, with glowing panels and extended limbs that gave the wearers additional reach. They moved into the room slowly, keeping their distance from Jake. One of them spoke through an external speaker. "We are security personnel. Please remain stationary while we assess the situation." Jake raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I don't want to hurt anyone else." "The doctor's injury was an accident. We understand," the security officer replied. "However, your presence has been classified as a potential threat to the ship and crew. We must take precautions." Jake watched as the aliens set up some kind of portable equipment around the room. Energy fields shimmered between metallic posts, creating a barrier that surrounded him but left plenty of space to move around. "Is this a jail cell?" "It is a safety measure," the officer explained. "For your protection as well as ours, Dr. Korath will return shortly to continue her medical evaluation. Please cooperate with her examination." The security team left, and Jake was alone again. He looked at the energy barrier that now surrounded him. It looked impressive, but he wondered if it would actually contain him if he really needed to get out. Based on what had happened with the bed and the floor, he suspected these aliens had seriously underestimated what they were dealing with. Jake settled back against the wall to wait. He needed to learn more about these people and their technology. More importantly, he needed to find out what had happened to Earth in the 500 years since his departure. Were there still humans out there? Had his species survived and thrived, or had they gone extinct like so many others? One thing was becoming clear, though. These aliens, for all their advanced technology, had never encountered anything like a human being. They had no idea what they had awakened, and Jake was beginning to suspect that was going to be a problem for everyone involved. Hours passed before anyone returned to the medical bay. Jake spent the time examining his prison, though he tried not to think of it that way. The energy barrier hummed softly around him, creating a dome of shimmering blue light. He tested it carefully by reaching out one finger. The field felt solid but warm, and touching it made his skin tingle. When the door finally opened, Dr. Korath entered alone. She moved slowly and kept well away from the barrier. Her forearms carried various scanning devices, and Jake noticed she was wearing what looked like protective armor under her medical robes. "How is Dr. Vorthek?" Jake asked immediately. "He will recover," Dr. Korath replied, though her voice was tense. "His injuries were more severe than we initially calculated. 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, and significant tissue damage. For a being of his build, such injuries could have been fatal." Jake felt the weight of guilt settle on his shoulders. "I really didn't mean to hurt him. I was just trying to help when he stumbled." "We understand that your actions were not intentionally hostile," Dr. Korath said as she activated her scanners. "However, the incident has forced us to reconsider our assumptions about your species." She began running various instruments over the barrier, taking readings of Jake's vital signs and physical condition. The scanners made soft beeping sounds, and Jake could see displays lighting up with information he could not read. "Your bone density is approximately 4 times that of a Cytherian," Dr. Korath reported. "Your muscle mass is dense beyond anything in our biological databases. Your cardiovascular system appears designed for extreme physical stress. These are not the characteristics of an intelligent species." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Dr. Korath paused her scanning to look at him directly. "In our experience, intelligence and physical power are inversely related. As a species develops mentally, it abandons the need for physical strength. The body becomes more efficient, more delicate, more specialized for intellectual pursuits. Your species appears to have developed both, which should be impossible." Jake shrugged, which made several of the scanner displays spike with new readings. "Humans have always been good at adapting. We had to be strong to survive on Earth, but we also had to be smart to build tools and work together." "Earth," Dr. Korath repeated. "That is the name of your home world?" "Yes, 3rd planet from a yellow star, about 25,000 light-years from here." Jake gave the coordinates as best he could remember them from the colony. "Mission briefings." Dr. Korath's large eyes widened further. She quickly activated a communication device and spoke rapidly in her own language. Jake could hear the concern in her voice, even if he could not understand the words. "Is there a problem?" Jake asked. Before Dr. Korath could answer, the medical bay door burst open. Kill Nexus rushed in, carrying what appeared to be a portable computer terminal. Her movements were jerky and panicked, and she was speaking so fast that the translation system could barely keep up. "Doctor, you must see this," Kill said breathlessly. "I have been researching the coordinates he provided. The planet he describes is in the Terran system, Sector 7 Alpha. It is scheduled for resource extraction next month." Dr. Korath went very still. "Are you certain?" "Completely certain. The mining fleet is already en route. The preliminary surveys indicate a primitive civilization with basic technology. The species is classified as non-spacefaring and suitable for relocation." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "What does that mean? Resource extraction? Relocation?" The 2 aliens exchanged glances. It was Kill who finally answered. "When the Cytherian Empire discovers a world with valuable resources, we extract them for the good of our civilization. If there are primitive inhabitants, they are moved to suitable reservation worlds where they can live safely." "You're going to strip mine my planet," Jake said quietly, "and move my people like cattle to some prison world." "It is not a prison," Dr. Korath protested. "The reservation worlds are carefully maintained to support relocated species. They have everything needed for a comfortable life." Jake stood up slowly, and both aliens took several steps backward. The energy barrier flickered slightly as his anger rose. "How many people live on Earth now?" Kill consulted her computer. "The preliminary survey indicates approximately 12 billion individuals of your species." 12 billion people. Jake tried to wrap his mind around the number. When he had left Earth, the population had been barely 8 billion. Humanity had grown and thrived in the centuries since his departure. And now these aliens wanted to uproot all of them for the sake of mining operations? You can't do this, Jake said. These are my people. They have a right to their home. They are a primitive species, Dr. Korath said, but her voice lacked conviction. They have not yet achieved interstellar travel. By galactic law, their world is available for development by more advanced civilizations. Jake walked closer to the energy barrier. The field strength increased automatically, but Jake could see the strain it was putting on the generator. Warning. Lights were beginning to flash on the control panel. Let me talk to whoever is in charge, Jake demanded. Let me negotiate for my people. That is not possible, Kill said quickly. You are a specimen, not a representative. The Empire does not negotiate with primitive species. Jake's hands clenched into fists, and the deck plates beneath his feet groaned under the pressure. Then what happens to me? Do I get moved to a reservation too? You will remain here for study, Dr. Korath explained. Your unique physiology makes you invaluable for research. We can learn much about the early stages of physical evolution from examining you. So I'm a lab rat. You are a scientific treasure, Dr. Korath corrected. Your species may be primitive, but you personally represent an amazing combination of traits. We could study you for decades. Jake felt something snap inside him. These aliens had saved his life, but only so they could keep him as a permanent test subject while they destroyed his homeworld and enslaved his species. The anger that had been building since he learned about Earth's fate finally boiled over. He reached out and placed his palm against the energy barrier. The field held for exactly 3 seconds. Then it overloaded with a sound like breaking glass. Sparks flew from the generator, alarms began wailing throughout the ship, and the barrier collapsed completely. Both aliens screamed and ran for the door, but Jake's voice stopped them in their tracks. Wait, the single word carried such authority that both Cytherians froze instantly. Jake had not shouted, had not threatened, but something in his tone made it clear that running would be pointless. Jake stepped out of the collapsed barrier and looked around the medical bay. His footsteps left clear impressions in the metal flooring. When he reached out to steady himself against a wall, his fingers left dents in the supposedly impenetrable hull material. I'm not going to hurt you, Jake said quietly. But I need you to understand something. You think humans are primitive because we haven't built spaceships like yours. You think we're weak because we haven't abandoned our physical bodies for pure intellect. He picked up a piece of the broken barrier generator. The metal casing crumpled in his grip like paper. But maybe you should ask yourselves why a species that builds these amazing ships needs to hide behind energy barriers when they meet someone new. Maybe you should wonder why beings with such incredible technology are afraid of one man who's been asleep for 500 years. Dr. Korath was frantically working her communication device, probably calling for security reinforcements. Kill stood frozen by the door, staring at Jake with undisguised terror. I want to talk to your captain, Jake continued. I want to know everything about this mining operation on Earth, and I want to know if there's any way to stop it. The extraction order cannot be revoked, Kill whispered. The mining fleet is already committed. The Empire has invested too much in the operation. Jake nodded slowly. Then I guess we have a problem. Security forces arrived within minutes, but they stopped at the doorway when they saw the collapsed barrier and Jake standing calmly in the middle of the wreckage. Their weapons were drawn, but Jake noticed they kept them pointed at the floor. Stand down, Jake told them. I'm not going to resist. But I want to meet with your commanding officer. We need to have a conversation about Earth. The security chief, recognizable by his more elaborate armor, spoke through his suit's external speakers. That is not possible. You are a dangerous specimen that must be contained. Jake looked around the room at the damage his mere presence had caused. The bent flooring, the dented walls, the destroyed medical equipment, the terrified faces of beings who considered themselves the masters of the galaxy. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess I am dangerous. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The security team did not know what to do. Their weapons were designed to stop Cytherian criminals, not beings with the physical power Jake had just demonstrated. After several minutes of tense standoff, their leader finally made a decision. "We will escort you to Commander Thexorian," the security chief announced, "but you will be surrounded by guards at all times. Any aggressive movement will be met with immediate response." Jake nodded slowly. "I understand, I just want to talk." The journey through the ship was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans but much more fragile. The walls glowed with the same soft bioluminescent light he had seen in the medical bay, and strange symbols flowed across display screens like living text. Other crew members pressed themselves against the walls as Jake passed, their large black eyes following his every movement. Word had clearly spread throughout the ship about the dangerous specimen that had broken free from containment. Some of the aliens whispered in their musical language, and Jake caught the tone of fear and curiosity in their voices. The security escort led him to a lift that moved not just up and down, but sideways and at angles that seemed impossible. Jake felt slightly dizzy as they traveled through the three-dimensional maze of the ship's interior. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber near what Jake assumed was the ship's bridge. Commander Thexoria was waiting for them. She was taller than the other Cytherians Jake had met, with skin that had a slight golden tint instead of pale gray. Her forearms moved gracefully as she gestured to a chair that had been hastily reinforced with metal supports. "Please sit," Commander Zorian said. Her voice was deeper than the others, with an authority that reminded Jake of military officers back home. "I understand you wish to discuss the situation regarding your homeworld." Jake sat carefully, testing the chair before putting his full weight on it. The reinforced frame held, though he could hear it creaking slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know this situation is unusual." "Unusual is an understatement," the commander replied. "In 300 years of space exploration, the Cytherian Empire has never encountered a species like yours. Your physical capabilities are beyond our understanding." She gestured to a large display screen that filled one wall of the chamber. Star charts appeared, showing the local sector of the galaxy with various colored markings. "This is our territory," she explained. "The green areas represent worlds under Cytherian control. The blue areas are allied species who have joined our empire voluntarily. The red areas are scheduled for development." Jake could see a small red dot in one corner of the display. "That's Earth?" "The planet you call Earth, yes. It falls within our expansion zone, and our surveys indicate valuable mineral deposits throughout the system. The operation will provide resources for 12 new colony worlds." "At the cost of displacing 12 billion people," Jake said quietly. Commander Zorian's expression did not change. "The relocation program is carefully managed. Your species will be provided with everything needed for a comfortable life on suitable worlds. Many relocated species have reported higher living standards than they experienced on their original worlds." Jake studied the star chart more carefully. The Cytherian Empire was vast, covering hundreds of star systems. Everywhere he looked, he saw the same pattern: green worlds under their control, blue worlds that had submitted peacefully, and red worlds marked for development. "How many species have you relocated?" he asked. 47 primitive civilizations have been successfully integrated into the Empire," Commander Zorian replied with what seemed like pride. "Their populations now total over 200 billion individuals, all living safely under our protection. 200 billion people ripped from their homes and moved to worlds chosen by their conquerors." Jake felt sick thinking about the scale of what these aliens had done. They spoke of it like a charity program, but it was conquest and slavery dressed up in pleasant words. "What if a species refuses to be relocated?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Commander Zorian hesitated before responding. "Fortunately, most species recognize the benefits of joining our empire, those that do not... She gestured to another section of the star chart where several systems were marked in black. "Some worlds have become uninhabitable due to the resistance of their populations." Jake stared at the black marks. Each one represented an entire world, billions of lives lost because they had fought against Catherian conquest. The alien spoke of these dead worlds with the same detached tone they used for everything else, as if genocide was just another administrative task. "You're monsters," Jake said softly. The room went very quiet. The security guards raised their weapons slightly, and Commander Zorian's golden skin darkened with what might have been anger. "We are not monsters," she said firmly. "We are builders of civilization." Before the Catherian Empire, this galaxy was chaos. Primitive species warred constantly, destroying themselves and their worlds. We brought order, peace, and prosperity. The relocated species lived better lives than they ever could have achieved on their own. Better lives as slaves. Better lives as protected citizens of a galactic civilization, Commander Zorian corrected. They contribute their labor and receive education, medical care, and security in return. It is a fair exchange. Jake stood up from his chair, and every weapon in the room immediately pointed at him. But he made no aggressive moves. Instead, he walked slowly to the star chart display and pointed at the red dot that represented Earth. "What you call a fair exchange, I call the destruction of everything that makes us human," Jake said. "Our history, our cultures, our right to choose our own destiny? You want to take all of that away because you think you know what's best for us. Your species has not yet achieved interstellar travel," Commander Zorian pointed out. "You are confined to a single world, vulnerable to any number of cosmic disasters. We offer you the stars, as servants in your empire, as valued members of a greater civilization." Jake turned away from the display to face the Catherian commander. "And what if I told you that humans won't go quietly? What if I told you that my species would rather die fighting than live as your protected citizens?" Commander Zorian's large eyes studied Jake carefully. "Then they would join the 47 worlds that chose extinction over enlightenment, and their planet would still be mined for its resources." The casual way she spoke of genocide made Jake's hands clench into fists. The metal chair he had been sitting in groaned as the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "How long do I have?" Jake asked. "The mining fleet will reach your system in 28 days, Commander Zorian replied. "The preliminary bombardment to clear the surface will begin immediately upon arrival. Your people will have approximately 6 hours to accept relocation or face the consequences." 6 hours. Jake thought about Earth as he had left it, with its bustling cities and green countryside. He thought about all the people living their lives, completely unaware that an alien fleet was approaching with the power to destroy their entire world. "I want to warn them," Jake said. "I want to contact Earth and tell them what's coming. That is not possible. Primitive species are not permitted access to interstellar communication systems. Then let me go home. Give me a ship and let me warn them myself." Commander Zorian laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "You are an invaluable scientific specimen. The Empire has invested considerable resources in your revival and study. You will remain here." Jake felt the last of his hope fade away. These aliens would not listen to reason, would not show mercy, and would not allow him to save his people. They saw humans as nothing more than interesting animals to be studied and managed, but as he stood there in the command chamber, surrounded by weapons and guards, Jake began to realize something important. The Catherians were afraid of him. They spoke of him as a specimen, but they treated him like a threat. Their most advanced containment systems could not hold him. Their security forces kept their distance even when he was being cooperative. Maybe they were right to be afraid. "Commander," Jake said quietly, "I have one more question." "What is it?" Jake looked around the room at the alien faces watching him. "How many humans like me do you think there are on Earth?" For the first time since he had met her, Commander Zorian looked uncertain. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm just a construction worker. Back home I was nobody special. Average strength, average intelligence, average everything." Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "So, if I can break your containment systems and terrify your security forces, what do you think 12 billion other humans might be able to do?" The silence in the room was deafening. Jake could see the implications. of his words sinking in as the Catherians began to understand what they were really planning to attack. 28 days, Jake said. That's how long you have to reconsider this operation. Because if you go through with it, if you attack my world and my people, you're going to discover that humans are a lot more dangerous than your surveys indicated. Commander. Zorian's golden skin had gone pale. Are you threatening the Catherian Empire? Jake shook his head. I'm trying to save it. The alarm that began wailing throughout the ship 3 hours later was unlike anything Jake had heard before. It was a deep, bone-shaking sound that seemed to come from the very walls of the vessel. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Jake could hear the rapid footsteps of crew members running to emergency stations. He was back in the medical bay, now under heavy guard. 6 security officers surrounded him at all times, their weapons drawn but pointed at the floor. They had learned not to aim directly at him after his casual demonstration of strength had bent several weapon barrels just by touching them. Dr. Korath entered the room, her thin frame shaking with what appeared to be excitement or fear. The High Command has responded to our reports, she announced. Admiral Kex Thulren is arriving with a battle fleet to assess the situation. Jake looked up from where he sat on the heavily reinforced chair. A battle fleet? That seems like overkill for one unarmed human. You are not just one human anymore, Dr. Korath replied. You represent a potential threat to the entire Empire. Admiral Thulren has orders to determine whether your species poses a genuine danger to Catherian expansion. The ship shuddered slightly as something large docked with the research vessel. Jake could feel the vibrations through the floor, and he wondered what kind of ship was big enough to make a vessel the size of Zenith 7 shake when it connected. 20 minutes later, the medical bay doors opened to admit a group of aliens unlike any Jake had seen before. These Catherians wore sleek black armor that covered their entire bodies, with helmet visors that glowed with internal displays. They moved with military precision, and their weapons were larger and more sophisticated than anything the ship's security forces carried. Behind them walked a figure that could only be Admiral Thulren. She was tall even for a Catherian, and her armor was decorated with symbols that probably indicated her rank and achievements. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. So this is the human, Admiral Thulren said, studying Jake like he was an interesting piece of machinery. The reports indicate that you possess unusual physical capabilities. Unusual for your species, maybe, Jake replied. Pretty normal for mine. The Admiral gestured to one of her soldiers who activated a portable device that projected a 3-dimensional image into the air. The image showed Earth slowly rotating in space. Ships surrounded the planet, too many to count. My fleet is already in position around your homeworld, Admiral Thulren announced. 12 Dreadnought-class vessels, 48 heavy cruisers, and over 200 support ships. More than enough firepower to sterilize the surface of an entire planet. Jake felt his heart sink. Even if humans were stronger than the Catherians expected, they had no weapons that could challenge a space fleet. Earth's most advanced spacecraft were still primitive chemical rockets compared to what these aliens possessed. However, the Admiral continued, your implied threat has given the High Command pause. We have decided to conduct a field test before proceeding with the extraction operation. What kind of field test? Admiral Thulren smiled, an expression that looked predatory on her alien features. You claim that humans like yourself exist throughout your species. You suggest that we are underestimating the danger your people represent. We will put this claim to the test. She gestured again, and the holographic display changed to show the interior of what appeared to be a large cargo bay. Jake could see Catherian soldiers setting up equipment and weapon systems. You will face a squad of our finest warriors in simulated combat, Admiral Thulren explained. If you can defeat them using only your natural abilities, we will reconsider our assessment of human capabilities. If you cannot, we will proceed with the extraction operation and consider your earlier threats to be empty bluster. Jake stood up slowly, and the soldiers around him immediately raised their weapons. And if I refuse to fight? Then we will assume you were lying about human strength, and the bombardment of your world will begin immediately. There was no choice. Jake could fight and maybe buy Earth some time, or he could refuse and watch his homeworld burn. What are the rules? Simple, Admiral Fullrun replied. You will be placed in our combat training facility with 12 of our best soldiers. They will be equipped with standard battle armor and weapons. You will have no equipment except what you can improvise. The contest ends when either you are incapacitated or all of our soldiers are defeated. No weapons for me at all? Your reports indicate that humans are dangerous enough without additional equipment. We will see if this is true. Jake nodded. Fine, but I want a promise. If I win this fight, you'll call off the attack on Earth. Admiral Fullrun exchanged glances with her officers. If you can defeat 12 armed and armored Catherian warriors using only your primitive physical abilities, we will postpone the extraction operation pending further study. It was not the promise Jake wanted, but it was better than nothing. When do we start? Immediately. The combat training facility was a vast chamber with movable walls and obstacles that could be reconfigured for different scenarios. Jake found himself standing in the center of a space roughly the size of a football field. Surrounded by metal barriers and elevated platforms, the 12 Catherian soldiers entered from the opposite side of the chamber. In their black armor, they looked like technological demons. Their weapons hummed with energy, and their movements were perfectly coordinated through their helmet communication systems. Jake looked around for anything he could use as a weapon or tool. The room had been deliberately cleared of loose objects, but the barriers and platforms were made of the same metal he had been bending and breaking since he woke up. Begin, Admiral Fullrun's voice echoed through speakers in the walls. The Catherian soldiers spread out immediately, using their superior numbers and firepower to surround Jake. Their weapons fired streams of energy that left scorch marks on the walls behind him. Jake dove behind a metal barrier just as the air where he had been standing erupted in crackling electricity. The barrier provided only temporary cover. The Catherian weapons were designed to cut through their own defensive materials, and Jake could see the metal beginning to glow and melt under their concentrated fire, but the aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had designed their training facility for beings like themselves, not for someone with human strength and ingenuity. Jake grabbed the bottom edge of the barrier and lifted. The metal panel, which probably weighed several tons, came up easily in his hands. He hefted it like a shield and charged toward the nearest group of soldiers. The Catherians scattered, but they were not fast enough. Jake swung the improvised shield in a wide arc, and 3 soldiers went flying across the room. Their armor protected them from serious injury, but the impact was enough to knock them unconscious. The remaining soldiers adjusted their tactics, trying to keep their distance while concentrating their fire. But Jake was already moving to the next barrier. He tore sections of metal from the walls and floor, creating makeshift weapons and projectiles. A thrown piece of debris knocked 2 more soldiers off a raised platform. Jake's charge up a ramp scattered 3 others, and his leap from one platform to another demonstrated reflexes and agility that the Catherians had not anticipated. Within 10 minutes, it was over. 12 of the Catherian Empire's finest soldiers lay unconscious or groaning in pain around the training facility. Jake stood in the center of the wreckage, breathing hard but uninjured. Admiral Fullrun's voice came over the speakers, but this time it sounded shaken. Impossible. Our computer models indicated that even with superior strength, a single individual could not overcome trained soldiers with advanced weapons. Jake looked up at the observation windows where he could see the alien commanders watching. Your computer models never met a human construction worker who spent 10 years moving heavy equipment and solving problems under pressure. The chamber door opened, and Admiral Fullrun entered with a small escort. She moved carefully, keeping well away from Jake as she surveyed the unconscious soldiers and destroyed training equipment. This changes everything, she said quietly. If one human can do this, if your entire species possesses such capabilities. Now you're starting to understand, Jake said. Humans aren't just strong. We're creative, we're stubborn, and we don't give up when someone threatens our home. You want to know what 12 billion humans can do when they're fighting for their survival? Admiral Fulron was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was very different from the confident tone she had used earlier. The extraction operation is hereby suspended pending a complete reevaluation of human capabilities. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. And the fleet around Earth? Will withdraw to a safe distance while we consider our options. Jake walked closer to the Admiral and she instinctively backed away. But he stopped at a respectful distance and looked her in the eyes. Admiral, let me give you some advice. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We fought with sticks and stones, with swords and guns, with aircraft and missiles. We've never had weapons like yours, but we've always found ways to win against superior technology. He gestured toward the unconscious soldiers. What you saw here isn't special. Back on Earth, this would be called Tuesday.